Well, another game now officially has joined the classic HD remaking that's been going on in the gaming industry lately. We could argue with whether or not this is really a cheap attempt for them to just resell games we've already played or to make a quick buck. But I don't know. For $40, I think it's definitely worth your money. But let's get into all three of these games. Let's start off with the stories. The story begins with our main character named Dante being attacked by a mysterious woman by the name of Trish. After Dante brushes off her attack using his demon powers, she then tells Dante that the demon emperor Mutas is planning to make a return to the human world and needs Dante's help to stop that. Dante then travels to a castle somewhere, and after battling hordes of different enemies and demons, he then discovers that Trish is actually working with Mutas. However, Dante chooses not to kill her because she reminds him of his mother. Dante then faces Mutas, and after a long and epic battle ends up defeating Mutas and flies away on an airplane with Trish, who then becomes his new partner for his business, Devil May Cry. The story takes place after the events of Devil May Cry 4, and it begins with a redhead named Lucia who's inside a museum somewhere, and when she's suddenly attacked by winged demons, Dante busts in with his good old-fashioned killing style. Then, after meeting Lucia's mother, he then agrees to travel to some city somewhere and deal with a businessman named Arius who wants to collect 4 special items that will allow him to open up the door to the demon world. There he will drain the power of the demon god Algosax, and with his power he will become a god-like demon and rule over the demon world and the human world. Finally, we get to the best out of all the Devil May Cry games, and my personal favorite, Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening. Devil May Cry 3 takes place before the events of the first game. Now, unlike the previous 2 games, the story is played out heavily through cinematic cutscenes, as you see here, and they're all filmed brilliantly. It begins with a man named Arkham entering Dante's unnamed shop and asking about his past. After this, Dante is attacked and stabbed numerous times, as you see now, by demons. However, their attacks don't seem to have any phase on Dante. He then quickly deals with all these demons in a truly badass style. If you guys want to see the rest, I suggest you pick up this game and play it yourself, because it's pretty cool. After this, a giant tower is seen elevating upwards in the middle of the city, and standing on top of the tower is Dante's twin older brother Virgil, whose main goal is to obtain the second half of the amulet that belonged to their mother, unlock the door to the demon world, and then take the power of their father Sparta. Along the way, a young demon hunter named Lady has also arrived at the tower to kill her father Arkham and kill every demon that gets in her way. That's all I'm gonna say in terms of plot, because if there's any reason to buy this HD collection, it would be just strictly for this game. The gameplay consists of levels called missions, in which you must perform specific tasks and defeat a number of enemies and solve puzzles. At the end of each mission, you will be given a grade that will depend on how fast you complete a mission, or how many red orbs you collected, or how much damage you took, or how many style points that you build up in your combat. This game also plays like other hack and slash games would normally play. However, you really have only 2 main forms of attacking. Triangle button uses your sword, while the square button and locking onto enemies is used to fire your firearms. By combining these 2 elements with your combat, you can perform high-scoring combos to better overall grade for each of your upcoming missions. The gameplay in Devil May Cry 2, in my opinion, is a big improvement over the first installment. No longer are you forced only to attack in one direction, but Dante will automatically lock onto the closest enemy nearby, which kind of makes it easier to attack enemies if you're in a surrounded environment. Also, the weapons is also easier to use simply because you no longer have to keep pressing the square button. As you can see now, you can actually just hold it down and Dante will automatically keep shooting. Now, as cool as that is, that does make the game a little bit easier, but I'll get to that in the flaws. Another cool feature you have is that after you've beaten the campaign with Dante, you can actually go through it with Lucia. And actually, surprisingly, it's actually better to play as Lucia. Her combat's a lot slower and much more challenging, which actually is kind of a good thing in my opinion. With Dante, it's a little bit more fluid and easy to just jump into. With Lucia, her combos are actually a little bit more simple and easier to get used to. And if you wouldn't believe me, her storyline is actually different and not a complete ripoff like it is in Devil May Cry 3. So, if anything, making branching paths was actually the one thing that Devil May Cry 2 does better than Devil May Cry 3. I know, shocking, right? Now, what makes Devil May Cry 3 so amazing and stands apart in line with other amazing hack and slash games like the God of War series is the gameplay. You are still fighting your way through missions and being graded on them, but this time around you will collect a wide range of really cool weapons and firearms that all play unique and have different functions. Also, you will have the ability to choose Dante's fighting style at the beginning of the game, and you can choose between Swordmaster, Gunslinger, Trickster, or Royal Guard. And the most interesting thing is that all your weapons and special attacks work differently with each style. There are numerous ways to dish out special moves, and you can even link them all together. The look of your Devil Trigger will also change depending on what weapon you have equipped at the moment you decide to use it. And as an addition, more than just alternate costumes in the special edition is that you can now play as Virgil, whose fighting style is different from Dante's, but is just as cool and badass. Unfortunately, as good as this game was received back in the early days of the PlayStation 2, this game does have a lot of problems that the developers did not even bother to fix when making this HD remastering. For starters, the gameplay feels very stiff and slow. You can't use your guns unless you're locked onto something. Your sword targeting is complete crap as well as the jumping mechanics. And basically, your sword can only attack in one direction if your enemy is in whatever direction Dante is facing, which basically means that if you're surrounded by enemies, that you're kind of in a really bad situation. The story is pretty bland too. Apart from the beginning cutscene and the point where Trish betrays you, there's really not much of a developing story. Now, this game has been hated on for a number of reasons by many gamers out there, and although I really don't hate this game as passionate as others, I can acknowledge what's wrong with this game as a whole. For starters, Dante's character is completely boring throughout the entire game, and he has this look on his face like he's got a broomstick up his ass. I mean, he just turns into basically a robot. And he doesn't carry any of the smart-ass remarks or witty one-liners that have made Dante a legendary video game character over the years. He just agrees to do everything Lucia's mother asks him for no real reason except he's got nothing to do. The villain Arius has to be one of the worst villains I've ever seen in a video game. He's hardly in it, he hardly has any dialogue throughout Dante's storyline, and he looks completely ridiculous as you see here. And you can't hear from my speech just because I don't want it too loud, but he has this really girly voice that makes him seem like a pussy the entire game. I mean, who would take someone who looks like this seriously? But the worst part of this entire game is the combat. The combat is simply too easy. Literally, the best way to describe the gameplay for this can be summed up in 2 sentences. Use your sword and you will most likely die. Use your gun and you can kill pretty much everything in this game, including the bosses. The problem that the developers made with the gameplay is they made it too easy to the point where the game is not even a challenge. And trust me, once you get the rocket launcher as you see here, the game gets even easier. You could beat this game using nothing but the rocket launcher in 4 hours. I'm not kidding. This game is truly amazing in almost every way. The only flaw that I can say most gamers will agree with me on is when you get to play as Virgil's storyline, all you're doing is replaying Dante's missions, which in terms of story makes no sense at all. When you get to boss fights where you actually would normally fight Virgil, you're fighting just a red version of yourself, which, makes really no sense at all. I mean, a storyline involving what Virgil was doing throughout the entire game would have been probably one of the greatest additions and one of the best reasons to go out and buy the special edition of Devil May Cry 3. But instead, it was just one great giant disappointment. And those are my reviews on the 3 Devil May Cry games that come part of the HD collection. If I had to judge them as individual games on my 5-year anniversary collection, I would give Devil May Cry 1 a 7, Devil May Cry 2 a 5, and Devil May Cry 3 a 9.5 out of 10. However, not doing that, if I had to really judge it as an overall HD collection, I would give it a solid, I'll be nice, I'll give this a solid 8. If you're someone who has an Xbox, this would be a great game to get in terms to see exactly how PlayStation 2 whooped the Xbox's ass. Or if you just never had a chance to play this on the PlayStation 2, this is definitely a must get. But as I said when I got to Devil May Cry 3, at least get it for that game. That game really came before God of War, and it really set the standards of what God of War would perfect. If you like this review, please like, comment down below, and subscribe up top. If you have any games or movies you would like me to review, please also comment them down below. And for the first time, I'm going to state that you can now friend me on Facebook or follow me on Twitter, and I will leave a link down below to where you can do both of those. Like always, thank you for watching this vid, and I will see you next time.